the chairpersons and members of the Board of Directors of state-owned companies, chief executives, those that are both in the Hollywood role and permanent of state-owned companies, and fellow South Africans, Sanbonani, Molweni, Kuyamidak, Tobela. I have the honor today, Chairperson, to present the budget vote for the Department of Public Enterprises. This is the year in which we celebrate, as we all know, the centenary of the birth of our national icon, President Nelson Mandela. We also celebrate the centenary of one of the key architects of our democracy, Albertina Sisulu. Together with their generation of freedom fighters, these giants of our democratic struggle sought to work for a society based on justice, fairness, equity, democracy, and non-racialism. The state-owned enterprises or companies constitute a key part of our national life and our national assets as well. They are central to our developmental and economic agenda as a government. The reform of state-owned companies is part of a broader agenda of structural reforms in our country. It is their spirit, the spirit of the Mandelas and Sisulus, and the legacy of integrity, service, and diligence that must inspire all of us today to do what is right for our country and our people. This is what we as a, if you like, community of SOCs must also do. President Ramaphosa, in his State of the Nation address, set us a challenge to encourage significant new investment in our economy with the aim of achieving sustained inclusive growth, creating jobs, reducing poverty, and transforming our economy. Inclusive growth and job creation are dependent on increased investment in our economy. South Africa needs as much local and foreign investment as possible to increase the growth and jobs momentum already on the way. This is the central priority of government this year. We in the DPE have embraced this objective, as do increasingly the SOCs. In presenting our plans for this fiscal year, we have and will continue to ensure that state-owned companies make their valuable contribution to new investments, both using public resources and by leveraging private sector resources. Through its state-owned companies, government will be investing some 368 billion rands over the next 3 years, of which Transnet and Eskom account for a significant share. Their investment will be directed towards upgrading and expanding the company's electricity generation and transmission infrastructure, as well as acquisition and maintenance of rail rolling stock, a contentious issue, and completion of the new multi-product pipeline. Improving the quality of the country's infrastructure will ensure a reliable and cost-effective electricity supply and efficient freight logistics and port infrastructure. This will make South Africa a more attractive location for companies to do business. This will also crowd in further investment by the private sector. The infrastructure investments being undertaken by state-owned companies also serve to improve the quality of life of our people. For instance, in the electricity sector, Eskom continues to connect new households to electricity with the aim of achieving universal access by 2025. Over 200,000 new connections were achieved in 2017-18 financial year, as an example. Honorable members and chairperson, we are indeed in a new dawn characterized by the spirit of Tumamina. The possibility and the actual emergence of this new dawn is the result of the hard and determined efforts of all South Africans. Key amongst those who work to strengthen our democracy and whom we must salute today and create conditions for the new dawn are ordinary South Africans, trade unions, the judiciary, non-governmental organizations, media, business, political formations, and committees of parliament as well. To sustain the new dawn will require vigilance, courage, and a commitment so that we serve our country and our people. In the new dawn, we should work to entrench the democratic ethos of the Constitution, social justice, and fairness. Through our institutions and state-owned companies, we must work to promote our constitutional values such as inclusivity, non-racialism, and gender parity. The state-owned companies belong to all South Africans. They are not the preserve of only a few, while some have, of course, tried to make it such. They must be used to advance our national interests and play their part in development and inclusive economic growth. So the role of SOCs, for example, as seen by the OECD, goes as follows, and I quote, "In many countries, SOEs are the main providers of key public services, including public utilities. This means that their operations have an impact on citizens' everyday life and on the competitiveness of the rest of the economy. SOEs are increasingly prominent actors in international markets." Close quotation. Traditionally, state-owned companies play an important role in addressing specific market failures or promoting a country's strategic interests. But there are other views on this question as well. In our case, an effectively managed and efficiently performing, well-governed public enterprise sector should play a dynamic role in, amongst other issues, delivering important public services and public goods that enable economic activity and improve the quality of lives of our people. Secondly, investing in infrastructure to reduce the cost structure in the economy so that other economic players become more efficient and competitive. Thirdly, supporting and growing small and medium-sized businesses. Fourth, undertaking research to develop new technologies to equip the country to compete effectively in a world after the Fourth Industrial Revolution, let alone in and during the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Fifth, transforming the patterns of ownership in the economy by directing their procurement spend and other activities to black-owned businesses. And finally, providing jobs, training, and skills development, all of which are essential in the decade ahead. We must get back to this basic mission. Not only must we contend with the present challenges, but also prepare for a very dynamic and different future. Reestablishing a public service culture and ethos is absolutely critical to this mission. This is our best antidote to greed and opportunistic behavior. Let me give you some examples of SOCs that have a central role to play in the progressive reform and strategic transformation of our economy. For example, Eskom's mission is the provision of energy and electricity, as well as related services, for the enablement of development and economic growth. It achieves this by powering the economy and enabling businesses, particularly mining and manufacturing, to thrive and create employment. Transnet, on the other hand, through its port, rail, pipeline infrastructure, facilitates the movements of goods, and in the case of the pipeline, fuel, from where they are produced to where they are consumed within the country. This promotes trade with our neighbors and provides a connection to export markets. It is critical as an enabler of cost-effective, efficient, and seamless movement of goods through our economic system. Denel supports the supply chain of both small and large companies operating in the defense sector. In addition to ensuring the country's security through its research and development, the company contributes to the development of advanced skills necessary for the company to compete in a world that is becoming increasingly sophisticated. Indeed, when functioning efficiently and in a well-governed manner, which I hope we will see soon, Denel has leading-edge technology and manufacturing capability that advances our national competitiveness. South African Express operates routes connecting secondary cities with the major metros, as well as connecting South Africa with some of its neighbors such as Botswana, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Namibia. This contributes to promoting economic activity, particularly tourism, in the region as well as in the secondary centers or cities. It is evident that by efficiently delivering on their core mandates, state-owned companies can directly contribute to enabling economic growth inclusively and creating jobs and therefore advancing the developmental state. However, notwithstanding their potential role in growing the economy, The last few years have seen a progressive weakening and capture of these institutions. In his State of the Nation address, when speaking about the establishment of the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into state capture, the President said, and I quote, "We are determined to build a society defined by decency and integrity that does not tolerate the plunder of public resources. The Commission is critical to ensuring that the extent and nature of state capture is established, that confidence in public institutions is restored, and that those responsible for any wrongdoing are identified. The Commission should not displace the regular work of the country's law enforcement agencies in investigating and prosecuting any and all acts of corruption," end of quotation. Following on these directives, if you like, we've set the following priorities for the coming year. We will work, if you like, to recapture the state-owned companies in our responsibility, putting in place strong and ethical boards, re-establishing good governance. We will ensure that companies function in line with their mandates and halt the vicious looting and theft of the last few years. We will work swiftly to stabilize these entities and return them to financial sustainability through the appointment of capable executive teams, refocusing the companies on their core mandates, ensuring that the companies have viable business and operating models, improvements in operational performance, and engendering confidence amongst lenders and the bond markets, as we know, is absolutely critical. We will look into how the collective resources and capabilities of SOEs can be used to promote inclusive growth, investment, and the creation of jobs. We will restructure and reorientate their businesses accordingly through proper consultations. SOEs must promote transformation through measures like preferential procurement to develop a new generation of Black, women, and youth-owned enterprises in our country. We will rebuild staff morale and restore the dignity of these entities and the people who work in them. Because I think we owe it to the hundreds of thousands of public servants in these entities to say to them, not all of you are rogues, we know that. But those that are, they must help us to identify. We will be holding to account those that have been directly involved in malfeasance, as well as those that have neglected their responsibilities and allowed state capture to happen, either through their participation or through their knowledge. In addition, those audit firms, consulting companies, legal advisors, and other such professionals that facilitated state capture must be answerable for the role that they have played in state capture. We will initiate processes which will enable government to recover the stolen funds. Go ahead, let's have some fun here. Unfortunately, it has become evident that several of the state-owned companies will not be able to trade and borrow their way out of the financial difficulties, and some funding will be required when government or from government. Strong and creative measures must be taken to return these companies to solvency. Should any government support be provided, this must be contingent on the companies diligently implementing interventions to return them to financial sustainability and enhance efficiency, as well as restructure their operating models to effectively deliver on their strategy and developmental mandates. What role will each of the companies in the Public Enterprises Department portfolio be playing in advancing this agenda? In the case of Eskom, it is responsible for the generation, transmission, and distribution of electricity. The company has installed capacity in excess of 45 gigawatts and generated some 225 terawatt hours of electricity in 2017-18. The key generation expansion projects, as you all know, are the Medupi and Kusile coal-fired stations. The reliability of the country's electricity supply has a major impact on the country's economy and its citizens' well-being. When the country experienced load shedding, this was estimated to have wiped off at least 1% of GDP at the time. This critical institution was on the brink of collapse through state capture. A compromised board and unscrupulous executives were installed who were actively engaged in enabling the looting of the institution. A classic example is the Tegeta purchase of Optimum coal mine. Interestingly, it was discussed in this room. In addition, there was a collapse in governance and audit qualification and irregular expenditure. The new ESCOM board, under the chairpersonship of Mr. Mabuza, who sits on my left, was appointed in January this year by government, as well as an acting chief executive, Mr. Hadebe. Since then, the board and chief executive have achieved the following. They are instituting a culture of effective and transparent governance, including ensuring that those who were engaged in fraudulent activities are brought to account. This has resulted in the departure of 6 senior managers on the basis of serious allegations of misconduct. A further 3 senior employees remain on suspension, and 2 of these will be facing independent disciplinary hearings in the month of May, which is the current month. This is only the first step in combating corruption. The board will continue to pursue wrongdoing or the wrongdoers and take corrective action within the law. Employees as well as outsiders have been encouraged to use the whistleblowing facility to share information about corruption at ESCOM. The response has been very positive so far. I'm advised that almost 250 matters are being investigated, of which there have already been 42 cases where actual corruption, fraud, or irregularity has been confirmed. Lifestyle audits. ESCOM is actually setting the pace. Lifestyle audits have commenced, and the process is projected to be finalized by the end of July amongst the management. Progress has been made in clearing the qualified audit issues that have been raised in the past financial year. There has been a positive change in investor sentiment and increased appetite for ESCOM bonds. The company raised 43 billion rands between January and March 2018, providing sufficient liquidity for the company. This has allowed ESCOM to recommence with its normal borrowing activities with the aim of securing a total of 72 billion rands over the 2018-19 financial year to enable ongoing implementation of its investment program. To ensure financial sustainability, ESCOM is seeking to optimize its revenue and collect municipal arrears whilst driving down costs to ensure that the entity does not borrow to service debt. Under the circumstances, acceptable operational performance has been achieved and the capital build program is on track. The final units at Medupi and Kusile will achieve commercial operations in the financial years 2021-2023, far beyond the original estimates. Whilst, and let me assure South Africans on behalf of ESCOM, there will be no load shedding over the winter period at all. Whilst it is too early to celebrate the full recapture, if you like, of this institution, the experience shows how under the leadership of a committed board, an ethical board, an executive management team who take decisive action, have the confidence and they can raise the confidence and morale of the staff fairly quickly, and notwithstanding what they've achieved, they will be the first to admit that much more still needs to be done. In the case of Transnet, it is responsible for providing land freight transportation services through its ports, rail, and pipeline infrastructure. During the 17-18 financial year, the company moved a total of 226 metric tons by rail, with general freight moving about 90 million tons, as well as 17 billion liters of fuel. The binding constraints to realize the accelerated and shared economic growth through Transnet's role is in the developmental state includes, firstly, the inefficiency of the transport and logistics system that forms the backbone of the South African economy. The fact that South Africa is far from its major export markets, and the fact that most production centers are situated inland away from the ports hampers South Africa's export competitiveness. And secondly, we have limits to competition. The fact that the South African economy remains relatively concentrated and that monopoly or dominant players' prices have a negative impact on downstream sectors and the development of new industries is constrained. as Minister Patel indicated in his budget vote speech. The role of Transnet in addressing these challenges is critical, and its ability to ensure that government's infrastructure network program acts as a catalyst towards the broader development of the economy will be a seminal marker of the progress being made towards building a developmental state. Transnet is in the unique position of owning and operating the bulk of South Africa's commercial, freight rail, port, and pipeline infrastructure. As an SOE, Transnet can leverage both government spend and commercial investment in transport infrastructure to make a significant contribution to inclusive growth and employment creation. By using the SOE structure, Transnet can maximize efficiencies in freight transportation and enable large-scale investment both in its own right and with the private sector in a manner that is efficient for society in the long term. Without a strategic SOE role, the freight network will depend on project-specific state revenue allocations and a short-horizon, non-integrated, costly private investment. Ensuring that effective state custodianship of the port, rail, and pipeline network is thus fundamental for the developmental state. During the month of April, at Transnet, the governance structures were repurposed to enable corruption and rent-seeking, we believe. There is evidence that contracts were awarded to people with close links to some of the Transnet officials, including board members, and there were clear conflicts of interest. The directors of Transnet, as well as some senior executives, were derelict in their duties, and there were regular violations, according to public information, of the PFMA, the Companies Act, and the Prevention of Corruption and Criminal Activities Act. During the month of April, the board accepted the resignation of the CFO, Mr. Peter, and I approved the appointment of Mr. Mohammed Mohammadi, who is a chartered accountant in the employ of Transnet for some years, to act in his capacity. I have accepted the resignation of the previous chairperson of the board of Transnet and several other non-executive directors. In line with the Companies Act, I've met the remaining Transnet board members to allow them to make representations concerning their retention on the board, and having carefully considered their representations, I decided to remove them as non-executive directors with immediate effect and installed a new interim board pending consultation with Cabinet. Although the company has been growing, the volumes of transport by rail that it handles and handles in the port system is done much more efficiently if we do not have some of these issues affecting the Transnet community. The new interim board of directors will be directed to act on the findings of the Worksman's investigation and other forensic reports, which clearly indicate and implicate various individuals by name. And of course, more is to follow. They will also review the large contracts that have been entered into to verify their legality. The Worksman seems to indicate that given the dubious legal status of some of these contracts, they could be revisited and renegotiated. In the case of Denel, it is responsible for the production of defense equipment, including small ammunition, landward systems, missiles, unmanned aerial systems, and military aircraft, as well as maintenance, repair, and overhaul, and systems engineering. Denel was one of those institutions where evidence of state capture began to emerge fairly quickly, and once again it seems that a weak and captured board and executives were intent on facilitating the exploitation of the company's valuable intellectual property to enrich Gupta-related associates and potentially launder money offshore. In doing so, the company flouted the PFMA and other legislation. The new board, which was appointed in April, has been tasked with implementing the findings of all forensic reports and holding those implicated to account. The CEO has resigned, and we've accepted his resignation, and I've approved the appointment of Mr. Mike Hobe, the current head of Denel Aviation, as the acting CEO of Denel. SA Express is also going through its share of difficulties. It, as you know, transports many passengers and provides cargo services, and the objective is to increase the frequency of services on low-density routes which are not viable for large aircraft. As a result of resignations and suspensions and other forms of interference, there are currently numerous vacancies at the airline. As a temporary stabilization measure, senior officials from the department were seconded to South African Express, whilst the process of appointing a permanent CEO and CFO is underway. Simultaneously, I am reviewing the board with a view to strengthening its capacity, and reports of corruption at SA Express, which were well publicized last week, are also being given careful attention. In addition to addressing governance and leadership challenges at the airline, government is working with SA Express to finalize the turnaround strategy, including the potential merger of all state-owned airlines in the near future. And on the one hand, we need to stabilize its finances. On the other hand, we need to check its technical capability, and we might be issuing some remarks in this regard in the next 42 to 72 hours, pending a report that I will receive later today. Honorable members, SAFCOL and ALEXCO also fall in similar categories of problems as the ones I've already described. And in the case of ALEXCO, we have serious concerns and have initiated forensic investigations into, amongst other things, exclusion of certain contractors from marine mining procurement, lack of transparency on the sales and marketing of diamonds. Somehow they find themselves in bags from time to time. Lack of information on the sales of these diamonds as well. I am currently reviewing the boards of SAFCOL and ALEXCO in line with what we've done elsewhere as well. Our key task, as we indicated earlier on, Chairperson, is to recapture and restore SOCs to their pride of place as they had it many years ago. In the next year, a central focus will be on recapturing these entities, and the task of rectifying years of abuse of our state-owned companies, not only by the Guptas and their associates, but also by other corrupt networks that have already begun in earnest. We have taken our marching orders from the President, who in his SONA address provided the context of the new dawn when he said, and I quote, "We will intervene decisively to stabilize and revitalize state-owned enterprises," quote, quotation. The first step in bringing stability to all of our state-owned enterprises, as we've indicated, has been to ascertain and begin to address the melee, the depth of corruption and criminal behavior that seems to have become endemic in many of these institutions. Together with the boards of each of these state-owned companies and following due process, corrupt executives will undergo disciplinary processes and be dismissed where it is appropriate, and new management appointed and existing vacancies filled with people of proven capability and a track record of ethical behavior. That is absolutely critical for the future. Government has established a Judicial Commission of Inquiry, as we all know, under the chairpersonship of the Deputy Chief Justice, to investigate matters of public and national interest concerning allegations of state capture. Like many other departments in government, we will be making a comprehensive submission to the Commission. We expect that the Commission will proceed expeditiously so that the stultifying effect of state capture can be dealt with decisively and uncompromisingly. There are various investigations also going on as far as the SIU and others are concerned. We shall not be satisfied with putting the criminals in jail. The money, honorable members, that has been stolen from SOCs and the things they have bought with them, expensive houses, flashy cars, and jets, amongst others, must be recovered and returned to the state. The SOCs will liaise closely and provide all the support they can to the law enforcement authorities, including the Asset Forfeiture Unit, to execute these tasks. In conclusion, let me say that holding private institutions that have colluded with state capture to account is also important. Whether it is the audit firms, financial institutions, advisory firms, legal firms, all of them have wittingly or unwittingly, in many instances, played a part in obfuscating and masking state capture, as we have learned in many of our inquiries in Parliament. The SOC Council, which was established in 2016, and the SOC reforms is something that the President will comment on in due course, and the department will make its contribution in that regard as well. SOCs, as I've said, Chairperson, have a vital role to play in our economy. It's important that we restore them to their true mandates and ensure that the hundreds of thousands of people that work in various capacities are using their talent in order to promote the national interest and not to confuse people about what the role of these entities would actually be. I will make further comments in my closing remarks, but let me thank everyone that has volunteered patriotic duty to serve on the boards and management so far. There'll be many more that will be called to do so. And the department's various programs will be directed and ensuring, Chairperson, as I conclude, that SOCs are monitored a lot more carefully than they have been in the past, and we expect to have close working relationships with the boards of these various entities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The next speaker is Honourable Kabashe.
Ngiyabonga phathi sihlalo nendlu yakho amalunga ahloniphekile alendlu, all the ministers and all deputy ministers and our guests. We, the South Africans, are blessed with many icons admired by the world over their humanism, courage, and tremendous foresight. We are celebrating 2 women this year. Umama uNontsikelelo Albertina Sisulu, who would have turned 100 years this year, and umama uNomzamo Winnie Madikizela Mandela, osanda kusishiya. This giant rose to become one of the towering figures of resistance against the brutal apartheid regime. We evoke the memory of our fallen heroes and heroines. We seek to return to the source, to ground ourselves in those ideals and values our forebears held dear. This debate comes during one of the most epoch-defining moments for our country. As we awake from the nightmare of widespread corruption and corporate capture, we are making a choice that this moment must go down in the annals of history as that moment the people turned it around. As the corporate capture project had targeted primarily our state-owned companies, it is important that government should turn things around decisively in these entities. Honorable Chairperson, among these was always the principle of putting the people first. It is clear that our SOEs were seen by some cynical individuals and families as nothing more than private channel for feeding their insatiable appetite on these resources of the people. I want to pay tribute to the Portfolio Committee of Public Enterprises for their courage working in multi-party inquiry, which is now preparing a report that will follow a process and be submitted before the House in the coming months. Njengoba sivumile sithi thuma mina. As we debate this budget, we must be guided by a bold and clear vision. We do not want modest improvement in our SOEs. We want to set the bar very high. We believe government policy of placing state-owned entities at the center of economic development and transformation is appropriate to our development needs. We therefore look at the budget to start a journey that will place our SOEs on a path to create wealth, reduce poverty, eradicate unemployment, and grow the South African economy. We mandate our government to derive from the medium-term strategy framework of 2014-2019, which is clear. The SOEs were expected to play the critical role of driving development through building and maintaining economic infrastructure. Their key priorities would include the expansion of electricity supply and the public investment in the transport sector, which would open up broad growth opportunities, both through improvement urban commuter services and a substantial expansion capacity to carry freight by rail. The NDP envisage investment in a strong network of economic infrastructure design to support the country's medium and long-term economic and social objectives. This economic infrastructure is precondition for providing basic services such as electricity and public transport, and it needs to be robust and extensive enough to meet industrials, commercial, and household needs. As part of our responsibility to turn SOEs around, the Portfolio Committee has made a call to the Minister of Public Enterprises and the department to act in this financial year and to take action against board members of state-owned entities who are implicated in corruption, including those who have resigned their position. Sithi nama-executive nawo akube njalo futhi kuwona abikwe kuma-councils wawo ama-professions awo such as ama-CAs, engineers, and legal profession. Siyakukhuthaza ukubekwa kwamacala nalabo abaphule abenze inkohlakalo, nalabo abaphule umthetho we-Public Finance Management Act, i-consequence management mayisetshenziswe baqondiswe izigwegwe. Working together, we must fast-track the shareholders' management bill in order to strengthen the oversight capacity of the department. We would like to see a plan to expand the corporate social investment of SOEs to help our people in the rural areas, work with the department to strengthen localization, to support small business and grow employment initiatives. We commend the work that has been done to respond to call made by the President in the 2018 State of the Nation Address to intervene decisively to stabilize and vitalize our SOEs. We are encouraged by this decisive action taken already to strengthen governance, root out corruption, and restore the financial position of our giant SOEs, such as Eskom, Transnet, and Dinel. Izinto zijikile. We believe that more still needs to be done. The department will take forward the restructuring and realignment process started in 2016-2017 financial year. This program has been finalized and the new budget structure has been approved. In this financial year, government must deal decisively with matters of weak governance, with a particular focus on strengthening the boards and management of SOEs, reduce inefficiencies and fragmentation in order to improve the quality allocation of SOEs and deal with delays and cost overruns in the delivery of capital projects. Parliament oversight over the quality of spending will be crucial in the current financial year, as we are working within a relatively constrained fiscal space. Government has to strengthen policy regulation to ensure that policy gaps and misalignment of policies become a thing of the past. The discussion on the funding model for SOEs is a matter of national importance to all South Africans. Our people cannot accept that a few of these companies continue to be a drain on the fiscus. Our state-owned enterprises must strike a balance between funding and development mandate, as well as their commercial strategy. Indeed, there are bright sparks in the family of SOEs in the Portfolio Committee of Public Enterprises. Dinel, for instance, demonstrated improving financial performance and reduction in debt due largely to its multi-year order book of 20 billion rand and the restructuring undertaken. We hope that the new interim board will be able to take this work forward. Despite the multiple challenges it has faced in recent years, Eskom's capital build program is on track. Since the 2005, the company has added 10,750 megawatts, a new generation capacity, and 7,649 of new transition for the national electricity grid. We welcome the announcement that says there shall be no load shedding during this winter season. We encourage the board to put more effort in attending to the coal challenges. We must applaud Transnet for leading the way with investment in research and development to the tune of 682 million. This investment will lead to the development of new technologies that will transform our transport and logistic industry into the fourth industrial revolution. We also welcome the interim board that has been announced by the minister. We are happy that the department is working to ensure that the remuneration and incentive standards for non-executive directors and senior management of SOEs adhere to the standard approved by the cabinet. We are concerned, however, with the high costs incurred due to travel and use of consultants. These items, coupled with the remuneration for employees, are set to increase at the average annual rate of 8.1% in the medium term, from 156 million in 2017-18 to 198.3 million in 2021. We are encouraged that the combined budget for departments' oversight program will increase as a rate of 7% in the medium term to 2020-21. Siyafuna ke futhi ukusho emphakathini waseNingizimu Afrika ukuthi sikujabulela kakhulu okwenziwa ungqongqoshe nokwamenyezelwa umongameli ukuthi izinkampani zikahulumeni ama-board of directors angabe esawenza umsebenzi nezinkampani lapho ama-board members khona. Futhi sikushayela ihlombe kakhulu osekuqaliwe okulidwe u-Eskom, futhi uminister ungqongqoshe amemezela ukuthi wonke ama-SOEs makawenze, futhi elandela umyalelo kamongameli uPresident Ramaphosa ukuthi abasebenzi bama-SOEs state-owned enterprises bangenza amabhizinisi lapho besebenza khona ngoba yiko lokhu okwenza ukuthi bangene enkohlakalweni.
Honorable member, your time is now expired.
Resources for oversight will be required to ensure the active 54 National Conference Governing Party resolution. Thank you, Chair. The Portfolio Committee support the budget. Siyabonga.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Mazzoni.
House Chairperson, Minister of Public Enterprises, Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. May I start off my 2018 budget vote debate by congratulating Minister Gordhan on his welcomed appointment as Minister of Public Enterprises. The loss of his membership on the Public Enterprises portfolio as a member is the gain to the department and South Africa as a whole. It is long overdue that our country stands together and once and for all kills the monster that is state capture that almost destroyed our country as a whole. Once again, brave men and women of South Africa, who despite facing tremendous pressure, potential job loss, alienation from certain sectors, have boldly spoken out and continue to do so and expose corruption, state capture, nepotism, cronyism, and mismanagement. These South Africans must be applauded. To you all I say, thank you on behalf of South Africa for your determination to look after the South African coffers, for your patriotism in the face of serious opposition from the highest echelons of power, and know this, your names will go down as true South African heroes. Our state-owned entities have not only been in a state of chaos, they have been in a state of capture. Still, every morning, another scandal breaks in the media. If we aren't dealing with Gupta-associated businesses being given tenders, we are dealing with children of employees being given multi-million rand deals and ex-CEOs being linked to various SOE contracts and wrongdoings. The Public Protector has certainly had her hands full with DA requesting various investigations into the SOEs. The latest revelation, including the intimidation of journalists who have exposed these scandals, shows the lengths to which the media are willing to hide up and cover up scandals. Criminal charges have been laid, and these charges are now finally being investigated. These charges are serious and are a matter of national importance. The DA welcomed the removal of Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown, but this was simply the first step in rectifying the disaster that rocked our country's economy. I am most pleased that the Committee of Public Enterprises has stood firm and that a full parliamentary investigation into the shenanigans at Eskom, Transnet and Denel are underway. These investigations bring into the public domain important information regarding state capture and cannot be left unfinished. What has happened at Eskom is a good start, and to Eskom I say, congratulations. It now needs to happen as a matter of urgency in Denel, Transnet, SAA, SA Express, and Alexcor. The rich simply cannot keep getting rich while the poor become poorer. It is up to us to break the cycle. We can do this, South Africa. We have to do this. We want the SOEs to work. We need our SOEs to work. We want to share ideas of how to make them financially sustainable, not to mention more effective. We may not have all the answers, but this is an issue of such national importance that we cannot make it a party political issue, and we are all on Team South Africa. We cannot let a public enterprises debate go by without talking about the plight of the Transnet pensioners. This issue has gone on for too long. People are suffering, and we have an obligation.
Mr. Chair, I ask that you
Can we
protect
have
our
a
speakers.
bit of order. Mama Kaula, it's a play. If that dialogue can stop across the benches, I do it assist you to move us forward. Please proceed.
Thank you, House Chair. We cannot let a public enterprises debate go by.
Point of order, Stan.
There's no point of order, you know it.
I'll do it in full umhlaba. Yeah. Sengenzeni ke mina ngoba ngihlalele ngibuza umhlaba mina uthini ngoba ukhuluma ngecorruption kodwa nabo bane corruption bantshontsha umhlaba wethu abakawubuyise.
Thank you, House Chair. We cannot let a public enterprises debate go by without talking about the plight of the Transnet pensioners. This issue has gone on for too long. People are suffering, and we have an obligation to finalize this issue and stop the suffering. It is not a case of when, but now. Minister Gordhan has shown us bravery and shown that he is a true South African patriot. We now, however, need the minister to dig deep and show us bravery one more time. The foundations have been laid. We have proved that we can expose those who have tried to collapse our country for personal gain. We cannot allow those who have been found guilty to simply slither away and disappear in the radar. Now is the time to follow through. No commission of inquiry, be it parliamentary or otherwise, is going to be good enough. People need to be tried in courts of law and sent to jail. The full might of the law must be thrown at those who tried to sell our country. We need government and the cabinet to give us, as parliament, the final tool to finish the job we started. The Department of Public Enterprises will play a pivotal role in ensuring that SOEs are never again given the free rein that they enjoyed in the past to appoint unsavory individuals to positions of power. This department must be the first line of defense for our country's economy. This department needs to change fundamentally the way it operates, and it must start holding SOEs to account by holding them to a much higher standard of accountability and of transparency. Do not let anyone stand in your way. This is your country duty. We have broken the legs of the state capture monster. Now it's time to break its back and teach a lesson to all those involved in South Africa. We must and always put South Africa first. Let us stand together as Team South Africa and slay the beast of state capture. Let us deal it its final death blow. South Africa, we have got this. South Africa was never, is not now, and will never again be for sale. Our state-owned entities will never be bought by the Gupta family with the help of number one ever again. As the web of state capture starts to unravel, so will the stranglehold that this unwelcome family has over our country. The time is now to put a stop to corruption and to capture. South Africa will never be for sale again, not on our watch.
Thank you very much. We'll now proceed to Honorable Dlamini.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you. Chairperson, they betrayed us, they lied to us, they stole from us. These are the words of over 40,000 ESCOM workers. These are the words of over 45,000 Transnet workers. These are the words of over 5,000 Tinel workers. They say these words because the politicians who presided over this ministry were thieves. The administrators who was leading this ministry were also thieves. The business people who was doing business with this ministry were also thieves. But let us welcome the firing of the corrupt Gupta stooge Lynn Brown. We also welcome the removal of the corrupt boards, corrupt executives from both ESCOM and Transnet boards. Let us also welcome the removal of the racist board member from ESCOM called Mark Lambetti. We also want to warn the new leadership of these entities that until the full disclosure of rot in ESCOM, Transnet, and Tinel is exposed and dealt with, we will never rest. But let us remind South Africa about the aims of this department. The aims of this department is to drive investment, productivity, transformation in the department's portfolios of the SOEs, drive industrialization, create jobs, and develop skills. But none of this has been realized because of lack of leadership in this ministry, both politically and administratively. Governance has collapsed. Some of the biggest state-owned companies are on their knees as we speak. This was demonstrated during the ESCOM inquiry, that this ministry, for the longest time, it has been run under the leadership of thieves, both politically and administratively. The rot in ESCOM ran so deep that during the inquiry, the instruction to suspend board members and the executives was coming from Ms. Tutumiani's home. While Mr. Zuma was in the same room, we are not sure what was he doing there and at what capacity was he there, whether personal or professional. The rot at Transnet ran so deep that Gupta Associates received billions in kickbacks in the locomotive tender. When they were supposed to negotiate the prices down on behalf of ESCOM, they negotiated the prices up. The systematic collapse of governance as state-owned entities was deliberate to allow this rot, and no entity under this department was safe. As the EFF, we want to make the following proposal towards rebuilding credible and stable SOEs that will form an integral part of industrialization and state capacity going forward. Our first proposal is that we must amend the legislation to end the powers of the minister as the only shareholder with all the power of billions worth of state entities. Because if you capture this one minister, effectively you've captured all the entities. The second proposal we're making is that the board members, senior executives of the state-owned companies, they must be selected and they must be interviewed by Parliament the same way we do with other important appointments. The third and the last proposal we are making, Chairperson, is that the state-owned coal company, African Exploration Mining, must get the biggest share of coal supply in line with our founding manifesto to build state capacity. Chairperson, state-owned companies have the potential to play a leading role in industrialization, but only when they have a clear mandate, proper leadership, and the control of the strategic sectors of the economy. Minister, you must go and collect our money from Bright Molife, Mackenzie, Trillion, the Guptas. We need that money back. Today we are spending millions of money unnecessarily on the state catch-up because this was allowed to happen under the ANC government. EFF rejects this budget vote. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. We now proceed to Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. Honorable Minister, one will excuse the pun, as this is an extremely serious debate. But enterprises falling within this portfolio have been at the coalface of state-sponsored corruption and to this day remains a veritable cash cow for certain unscrupulous public officials and well-connected political and business interests in South Africa. As a model of nepotism, maladministration, and mismanagement, it has no equal. The IFP has long been vociferous in its call for the disbanding of this department and for its entities to be reassigned to fall under their line function departments. In fact, the IFP did not support the budget vote last year. Classifying the last year in this department as an annus horribilis would in fact be far too kind and would not do justice to the extensive amount of damage that has been wreaked upon our country and the tax-paying citizens by sheer gross mismanagement, maladministration, and corruption that has been taking place. Chairperson, although this principally remains our position, our concern has been greatly alleviated since the appointment of Minister Godhan as Minister of this portfolio, which includes political authority over the 6 state-owned companies that fall within its mandate. Minister Godhan represents to us a light at the end of the tunnel, make note ESCOM, in terms of the effective ministerial oversight of state-owned enterprises. I have known him for the better part of 47 years when he was my student leader in 1971. And I know him that, there's one illness that he does not have, and that illness is arthritis. And the arthritis which makes your hand bend this way. Because today, the cancer of corruption in our society is arthritis. Everybody wants something for a tender. So, Minister, you don't have that. I know you will continue in that light. The arm's length approach that was adopted by your predecessor simply did not work. And we are seeing such laissez-faire attitude come to light now in terms of all the current public inquiries that are taking place in this portfolio. The crux of the matter, Honorable Minister and colleagues, is that almost R500 billion of taxpayers' money is standing there as state guarantees for these state-owned enterprises. If they fail, then it's taxpayers' money that's going to be called upon. So it's not only the operational side of the enterprises, but these guarantees that we must protect. Minister, you have hit the ground running, but I want you to please look and investigate Transnet's acquisition of the former Durban port for what was described a record 1.8 billion rand. At that time, Minister Malusi Gigaba said there'll be 64,000 jobs during the construction and 28,000 permanent jobs. We need to know where are we going with that project. Was there value for money, and are we seeing any ESCOM light at the end of the tunnel? But, Honorable Minister, we have a lot of faith in you and the new boards that you are going to be appointing. We know that you are going to have having new officials within the department, and in that spirit, and in the hope of a turnaround, we are going to give you the benefit of the doubt in leading this department. But maybe you will agree in time to come as a collective in government that these departments should fall under particular line function departments. But for now, we need the Department of State Enterprises, we need your leadership, and we will support this budget vote. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much. Next speaker is Professor Kubisa.
Angibonge Sihlalo. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members, and our guests. The state-owned enterprises play a critical role, a crucial role in poverty alleviation, job creation, and economic growth. These SOEs are strategically positioned to help enhance the developmental needs of the country. The SOEs play an operational role in that regard. The DPE is the shareholder representative of government. It works through boards that ensure good governance, financial sustainability, transformation, equity, infrastructural maximization to create jobs. Most of the SOEs have been engulfed by huge challenges of fraud, corruption, bad governance, maladministration, etc. Reports of corruption, fraud, and maladministration in ESCOM, DNL, SAA, Minister, we're happy, as you say, this would be a thing of the past. The National Freedom Party therefore supports your priorities for reviewing current boards, improve efficiency, restoring SOEs, financial sustainability, reducing of dependence on the government fiscus, like it happened with SAA, and ESCOM had to recover from that as well. And also the reduction of corruption. And it adds a new impetus, Honorable Minister, to hear that these SOEs will be revitalized in a bid to make them profitable. And we acknowledge also the capital expenditure program that's coming, 160 billion, coming largely from Transnet and also ESCOM, which is 60 billion. And we hope that these will be used profitably to create jobs and also to alleviate poverty. And we also welcome the ESCOM bill program and municipal electrification project, and which of course are the two labor-intensive projects to create job opportunities. The SOEs must ensure that those of our people who were disadvantaged, previously disadvantaged, get jobs and also business opportunities. And you have alluded to this, Honorable Minister. And of course, all of these will enhance economic growth and assist in poverty alleviation. And I want to applaud and commend the Portfolio Committee for doing a sterling job of an inquiry into the affairs of ESCOM. Those that resigned after committing fraudulent and corrupt activities must be brought to book. It would be unfair if they escaped when we have so many people who are starving as a result of their activities. Our ports are our treasure. We must expose our young people and women in particular to maritime industries. We therefore welcome the amount of 2 billion towards improving port infrastructure. We are happy to hear that spending on consultants will be decreased by 15.9%. But Minister, the allegations of political interference and bad treatment of the employees in some of the ports is worrying. So we'll, as the NFP, request that you check on that. SOEs must continually transform, our railway lines must be improved, technology must improve, and your regional and global agenda is therefore welcomed. We must forge partnership and connection with Africa and the rest of the world. We must continue to spearhead the industrialization and the energy resource programs. The decrease of the budget of the energy resource from 27.7 million to 15.9 million is unenviable. SOEs must shape up. They must be focused towards producing beneficiation, localization, and producing black industrialists. The DPE must target schools and expose our learners to the offerings of DPE. I know that ESCOM in particular has a program, a leadership program, whereby some of our learners are given learnerships, etc. The recommendation on disciplining, firing, and charging corrupt board members and executives is welcome, Honorable Minister. The stakeholder management bill must be fast-tracked. Then DPE must introduce a more comprehensive corporate social investment plan for communities in rural areas.
Expired.
Thank you very much. We support the budget. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Honorable Kwangwa may not be here, so we'll proceed to Honorable Tsedi. Tsedi will be followed by Albert, then only Madisha.
Thank you very much, Honorable
as a third
Chairperson,
speaker.
Honorable Ministers and Honorable Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members, boards of state-owned entities, senior executives of the guests in the gallery and fellow South Africans. The ANC supports the budget of the Department of Public Enterprises. In his State of the Nation address, President Ramaphosa stated that, and I quote, "Many of our state-owned enterprises are experiencing severe financial, operation, and governance challenges, which has impacted on the performance of the economy and placed pressure on the fiscus. The recent action we have taken at ESCOM to strengthen governance, root out corruption, and restore its financial position is just the beginning," close quote. He further indicated that government will take further measures to ensure that all state-owned companies fulfill their economic and environmental mandates. Since that pronouncement, Chairperson, tremendous progress has been registered in some of the state-owned companies by the ANC-led government in attending to these challenges. My contribution to this debate, Chairperson, will touch on some of the interventions government made as well as the achievements registered since the last budget, focusing largely on Elexco and DNET. Elexco has spent in excess of 6.5 million on IDP projects in collaboration with the Richterveld community. These projects include the upgrading of the sewerage pipeline infrastructure to meet the growth through the RDP housing. Other projects include the upgrading of community halls, renovation of clinics, repairing of water supply systems, renovation of houses of disabled community, and also the municipality resort. The resort is well resourced in order to aid the municipality's income. These are just some of the success stories of this only remaining diamond mine in the Richterveld area, and also one of the biggest in the greater Namaqualand region. Honorable Chairperson, about 13,000 people in the Alexander Township
solely relies on Elexco for municipal services like water, electricity, road infrastructure, collection of refuse, maintenance of parks, etc. The provision of bursaries for the 4 students and other youth development programs, such as diver training, the sponsorship of salaries of teachers, as well as the provision of food hampers for senior citizens in Kubos, Randfontein, Lekerseng, Extelfontein will go a long way in the social upliftment of communities I mentioned. The company provides adult education and training to employees and community members in the area, and also pays monthly stipends to Mining Qualifications Authority students studying at NFET College in Okip for workplace exposure at the time. As the portfolio committee chairperson, we are pleased about the significant progress that has been made in discharging the legacy rehabilitation specified in the deed of settlement by demolishing all buildings in the mine Alexander and Alexander Township that are not required for operations because of the asbestos roof. This honorable chairperson shows the extent to which the company is concerned about the health and safety conditions of the people in the area. We are, however, worried about the slow pace in the payment of the 45 million for development in Richterveld, and we therefore urge the minister to urgently attend to all the outstanding matters in this regard, including to ensure that the board and community structures are properly and legally constituted. Honorable Minister, the sustainability of the state-owned enterprises to effectively execute their mandates cannot be overemphasized. We expect them to develop other sources of revenue instead of placing too much pressure on the fiscus. The days for bailouts must be something of the past. Chairperson, the 2017-18 financial year was the most difficult year for DINEL, but we are pleased with the turnaround strategy put by the minister to ensure the sustainability of the company, which encompasses, amongst others, restructuring, which is aimed at the reduction of operational cost base to benchmark levels, as well as to adjust market-driven skills, redesign for sustainable high-performance business operations, and lastly, realignment to secure key enablers for the company to expand and penetrate new markets. Fitch Rating Agency has since confirmed its national and long-term and short-term ratings as positive and stable, reinforcing the strength and focus of the company's resilience under extremely trying business conditions. At the heart of DINEL's resistance for its existence is its continued ability to deliver on its mandate to be a strategic asset of the state, which provides sovereign security capabilities to the SANDF. In the area of education, almost 1,000 learners from grade 10 to 12 benefited from the school's outreach program, offered over weekends and during school holidays, especially in maths and science. Though most of the state-owned companies reporting to the Department of Public Enterprises have drastically decreased their spending on consultants, a lot must still be done. At the same time, ensuring that specialized and skilled staff as well as qualified board members are appointed in line with the ruling party's 54th National Conference resolutions. The department must strengthen its oversight capacity to ensure it is up to the task, and there must be consequence management for those responsible for wrongdoing. As the portfolio committee, we will monitor with keen interest the implementation of the recommendations of the ESCOM inquiry we have just concluded once they are adopted by this August House. We initiated and led this inquiry as the ANC because we remain committed to root out corruption in our SOCs as per the call by the President. Equally, we will do the same with the recommendations of the Presidential Review Commission, which is aimed at realigning SOCs in line with the ANC conference resolutions, including remuneration standards of CEOs. As we have noted, there has been slow progress in that regard. Honorable Minister, the ANC welcomes your commitment to prioritize financial and governance challenges in the SOCs, including the dissolution of all dysfunctional and corrupt boards like the replacement of transport board members you announced yesterday. We pledge our unequivocal support to you in your endeavor to ensure state-owned entities do fulfill their economic and developmental mandate Once more, the ANC supports the budget. Ndolibuwa, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to Honorable Albert.
Thank you, Chairperson, Minister Gordon. Minister, last year I told the previous minister that her department had become the feeding ground for a small but ferocious group of public employees and their private sector connections that are eating and stripping public and private assets like piranhas. But now things have changed. Voorheen het die staatskaper straffeloos opgetree, sonder dat hulle eens veel moeite gedoen het om hulle handewerk weg te steek. Nou hardloop hulle vir die heuwels, en daarvoor verdien u erkenning, Minister. It is also our duty today, Minister, therefore, to bring more state capture examples and other concerns to your attention. You might be aware of some, but we are also introducing new allegations that deserve attention. We are today focusing on Transnet and Eskom in relation to pensioners. Eerstens, Eskom. Gegewe Eskom se hoë skuldvlakke en die hoë vlakke van effekte alreeds uitgereik, moet die minister toesien dat die staatsdienspensioenfonds nie verdere blootstelling kry aan Eskom nie. Eskom is tans 'n subbeleggingsgraad entiteit en pensionaars se fondse kan nie gebruik word om Eskom se stukke op te tel nie. Secondly, and more importantly, Transnet. The Gupta-linked regiment's capital nested itself deep within Transnet. With the help of their connected friend Stanley Shane, they were appointed to perform tasks that Transnet could actually perform themselves. Mr. Shane then moved on to become the chairperson of the two struggling Transnet funds, whose pensioners are now in an 80 billion rand class action court struggle against Transnet for stripping their funds. Coincidentally, Regiments was appointed as the fund manager for the two struggling pension funds. Regiments was suddenly removed when they were caught performing an interest swap transaction in conflict of interest on behalf of the Transnet Second Defined Benefit Fund. We need to alert the Minister regarding the following irregularities that deserve investigation and action by prosecuting the responsible Transnet board members and the trustees of the pension fund involved. Firstly, we have established that the appointment of regiments was contrary to the Preferential Procurement Framework Act. Furthermore, the interest swap transaction with Transnet as the counterparty exposed the Transnet Second Defined Benefit Fund to a transaction that could almost have wiped out the entire fund. We will provide the Minister with a report on which further action can be taken. In the meantime, we have submitted the report to the corruption desk of the Hawks. I also wish to impress on the Minister to expedite the settlement of the class action court case against Transnet and the government. We asked the Minister to take note of the following two factors. Firstly, the 80 billion rand claim is now more than 100 billion rand due to the addition of monetary interest. And secondly, the Constitutional Court ruled that the pensioners have a reasonable prospect of success in the matter.
A minute left.
Thank you, Chairperson. This means that should the matter not be settled and the case is lost by Transnet, it will set in motion a domino effect of credit ratings meltdowns among all state-owned enterprises in South Africa and possibly including the state itself. Ons vra dus dat die minister dringend optree om pensionaars se belange te beskerm teenoor beide Eskom en Transnet. Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much. Honorable Madisha. Please proceed.
Thank you greatly. Honorable Minister, of course, through your chair, you have played a positive role, both pre and post pseudo presidency of Mr. Zuma. And we welcome that. And one therefore wishes to say, welcome back. History will recall that the beginnings of South Africa's the two SOEs. Of course, others have emerged. Chair, the NDP states that our SOEs are central to advancing our national objectives through the provision of economic and social infrastructure. In this regard, the NDP notes that the country needs to be served by a set of SOEs that are efficient, financially sound, and well-governed, that address the country's developmental objectives in areas where neither the executive arms of government nor the private sector are able to do so effectively. Continuing, the NDP states that these enterprises must deliver a quality and reliable service at a cost that enables South Africa to be globally competitive. Chair, with each passing day, so the extent of the capture of many of our SOEs becomes more worrisome in its extent and the damage done to our developmental objectives. Chairperson, the efficiency and efficacy of our SOEs has been seriously damaged. Secondly, most are far from financially sound or self-sustainable, and many are significant drain on our fiscals. 3, many have despicably governed and maladministered and rendered dysfunctional. And the next point, instead of fostering and furthering our developmental objectives, many have imperiled over development and the future. It will take time, effort, and resources to right the wrongs done and to get our country back.
A minute left.
Mr. Minister, South Africa breathed a collect sigh of relief at the forced resignation of Mr. Zuma from the presidency. And many have welcomed your appointment to this key ministry, especially given the task of recapturing of our SOEs. It is imperative that the governance and administration of our SOEs is directed by the values and principles set out in Chapter 10 of our Constitution. It is through you that we expect from our SOEs a high standard of professional ethics, 2, of the efficient, economic, and effective use of resources, 3, that our SOEs are there not to bolster their own reason for existence, but ensure the achievement of our national development imperatives.
Time has come to an end.
They ensure transparency and our access to information.
Time up.
But I must say that we welcome this and hope that we shall be able to move forward properly. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We'll proceed to Honorable Zet Luyenge.
Chairperson, ministers that are here present, and of course, under the leadership of our own minister, Honorable Pravin Gordhan, congratulations for being appointed by the ANC to steer this ship that we rely on. The African National Congress, in supporting this budget vote, I wish to remind some of the listeners and readers of social media. A story was trending on social media last weekend. One of the online news outlets started the story with a witty headline which read, drama in mid-air. Unquote, I started imagining my own funeral, close quote. These words were reportedly spoken by a SA Express passenger on a flight from East London to Johannesburg, who described how she and other passengers were terrified as the plane's engine failed in mid-air. She had boarded the plane at 6:30 on Friday morning en route to a meeting in Pretoria. Needless to say, she did not make it to that particular meeting. The pilot made a chilling announcement when the plane was thousands of meters above the earth, unquote, we have lost one engine, and close quote. Fortunately, the pilot was able to turn the Bombardier CRJ-700 regional jet around and land it safely at East London Airport. It was also reported that on the same day, another SA Express flight from Cape Town to Port Elizabeth also returned to the airport due to technical glitches. Once again, social media went abuzz with posts, comments, and retweets by traumatized passengers fuming about their ruined plans. One of these posts was by a well-known journalist who took to Twitter and wrote, open close, I should have told my crush I love him, close quote. In another tweet, she says, hashtag SA Express, I've always hated you. I hope Silly sells you, useless airline, unquote. The response from SA Express was that the airline is so cooperating with the SA Civil Aviation Authority in its investigation into the cause of the malfunction. If SAX was one of the privately owned commercial airlines, I believe we would all be up in arms condemning the recklessness of the greedy corporates who place profits ahead of our people's lives. Chairperson, whereas this is one of the entities from the family stable of public enterprises, it is imperative that we hold it to an even higher standard of scrutiny. Our oversight must be conducted without fear or favor, but it must still be factual and fair. The minister has been frank about challenges facing the airline, and we need to commend him for this. We now know that there has been rampant malfeasance at the company that needs to be investigated. Several of its aircraft are still grounded since May 2016, when South African Civil Aviation Authority took that decision. The Honourable Minister has recently informed our committee that the board of SA Express is all but depleted and that a Deputy Director General from the department has been seconded to act as Chief Executive. The fact that the number of aircraft has decreased due to many technical defects has resulted in a decline in aircraft availability and reliability. These shortages of aircraft and technical problems must be arrested if the company is to be sustainable. These have led to the recent horrifying experiences of passengers that were recounted in vivid detail on social media and the traditional press. Your Honor, government must make sure that collaboration between SA Express and other SOEs continues and that opportunity to share best practice and technical know-how are created. The ongoing with SA Airways to find synergies on commercial activities, procurement, human resources, and information technology must be consolidated to ensure that the two airlines are both saved. In spite of the seeming doom and gloom, SA Express has performed relatively well in the training of highly skilled personnel, such as pilots, most of whom are from historically disadvantaged communities. As we conduct our review of SA Express, we must look back and learn lessons from the decisions that have been taken over the years by successive boards and the shareholder. These include investment decisions on capitalization, maintenance of fleet, governance, appointment of suitable qualified staff in key positions, and injection of resources to ensure the viability of the company. We are concerned about the issues of criminal nature that are being investigated. We have not received a report on what has been done about those people who have had a hand in the malfeasance, including the one who have resigned from the company. Equally, Chairperson, at ESCOM, we want to see some people who were at the center of capturing and repurposing our state-owned companies for the benefit of certain families being put behind bars. As we sat through the painful parliamentary inquiry testimonies, we became very conversant with the governance challenges that have plagued ESCOM for many years. We understand the scale of the problems and appreciate the work done so far by the new board and management, overseen by the Minister, Honorable Pravin. Well done, Mkulua, and the department. We believe that we need to give this new competent team a chance to work on their turnaround strategies. In spite of all challenges, we still need to take a nuanced view of ESCOM. It is unfair to see the company as if it is entirely in tatters. It is still a giant power utility with an enormous footprint in Southern African economy and massive resources and capabilities. ESCOM has maintained a satisfactory operational performance even though all financial indicators had declined. The low profitability was mainly due to high costs, low tariffs increase, and low demand for electricity. The progress made in clearing the audit qualification issued in the previous financial year must be applauded. We must welcome reports that ESCOM had realized efficiency savings over a 5-year period in excess of 60 billion rand target. The work of the new ESCOM board and management, who have raised 57 billion rand from the financial markets, most of it since January for the year ending 31st March 2018 to provide liquidity, is nothing short of a miracle. It suggests that our power utility was saved from the brink of collapse. We know we are not out of woods yet, but I want to assure the honest, hardworking people at ESCOM that they will find in our portfolio committee a dependable ally in their work to turn around the institution under the leadership of Honorable Gabashe. And I want to confirm to Honorable Pravin Gordhan that we rely on you. As we perceive our country as a developmental state, we want the role of the communities in the activities of the entities and the department to be very clear, and we want to make sure that where South Africa belongs and where South Africa globally is competing, it is there. And it is not just a miracle. It is something that we fought for, and it is something that we will continue to make sure that the sustainability of these entities is the sustainability of South Africa competing globally. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll now have Honorable Ann Swart to be followed by T. Gordy.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the ACDP wishes to congratulate Minister Gordhan on his appointment. We are grateful that he's been appointed to this all-important political control of this all-important portfolio. And we welcome his announced intentions to recapture the SOEs and halt the vicious looting and theft that has taken place. And we want to pay tribute to him and to all our colleagues across political parties who served diligently on the ESCOM inquiry. You remained resolute and strong, and we're determined to expose the rot of state-captured ESCOM, despite death threats and other forms of victimization. And the inquiry has shown what parliamentarians can achieve in exercising our oversight functions effectively when united in purpose. Minister, who will forget your penetrating cross-examination of former Minister Lynn Brown? As a lawyer, I was very impressed. But however, it is disgraceful that Guptas and others were aided and abetted to loot South African SOEs and departments. This was a coordinated political project whereby governance structures were systematically repurposed to serve corrupt interests. But critical checks and balances built into the Constitution were also undermined to enable ill-gotten gains to be channeled out of South Africa. Institutions such as SARS, the Hawks, SIU were all affected. They were starved of resources and led astray by politically appointed leadership. An example of this was the ample prima facie evidence of state capture made available in the Public Protector's report way back in 2016. Yet very little was done by the Hawks and MPA until earlier this year when the Hawks recovered from the avian flu. We were constantly given the assurance in the Justice Committee that investigations were ongoing and that there was no chance that the Guptas would be able to flee from the country. But that is exactly what happened. And we're now at the mercy of foreign law enforcement agencies to ensure that the suspects are returned to South Africa. Thankfully, the asset forfeiture unit managed to obtain a number of preservation orders against companies, and this includes McKinsey and Trillion. McKinsey, who offered to pay South Africa 1 billion rand back, to pay Eskom. We sat this in this inquiry. I said to Eskom then at the end of last year, get a court order, it's easy, you'll get 1 billion rand. Nothing was done. And thankfully now the Eskom board is at least trying to get that money back. But the asset forfeiture unit is ahead of them in the queue, and there's a chance that those funds might go to the criminal asset recovery unit. So we also need to be mindful as parliamentarians that the Guptas, Duduzana Zuma and others have treated Parliament with absolute contempt. This was foreseeable, and that's the reason why I recommended back in December that summonses should be issued then already. I think Minister Gordhan, you also indicated, let's take urgent steps against that.
A minute left.
But Minister, there is a new dawn and attempts will be made to stabilize our SOEs, and we support that. And we agree that directors need to be held to a high standard of corporate governance and accountability. Directors must be held criminally and civilly liable. In addition, as I've said before, where there are serious breaches of fiduciary duties, Minister, bring Section 162 applications to have those directors declared delinquent directors. It doesn't help them to be moving from one directorship to another. We have to prevent that, and please look into the way the lists are drawn up by the Department of Public Enterprises as to who can qualify to be directors. We're on course to recapture the SOCs. The looters will be looted. The state captures will be captured. Justice and righteousness will prevail. I thank you.
Thank you very much. Temba Godi, Honorable Temba Godi, next, to be followed by E.J. Mare.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Chair, comrades and honorable members. SOEs have been in the news for wrong reasons. Bailouts, state guarantees, breakdown in governance leading to mismanagement of public funds through waste, theft, maladministration, and corruption. Drastic measures are necessary to ensure proper management so that they do not become burdens to the fiscus. We need strong political and administrative will to ensure that SOEs serve and achieve their strategic objectives of job creation and transformation. It is the conviction of the APC that SOEs must be consolidated and actually expanded to enhance the state's hand to transform the inherited socio-economic power relations from apartheid. Therefore, privatization will be inconsistent with the goal of job creation. SOEs are number one in the misuse of expansions and deviations which favor long-established white companies. Deviations are supposed to be an exception, but this is widely abused to favor white companies. The capture of SOEs goes far beyond the Guptas. For example, Bidvest security contract was extended 13 times without going on tender at Transnet. Eskom is too big to fail. It can pose a real and serious risk to the economy. Mr. Hadebe proved himself when he helped turn around the land bank. We wish him well at Eskom together with everybody there. However, of note is, what is the risk to Eskom's balance sheet of the IPP contracts, as well as the non-payment for electricity by dysfunctional municipalities? Lastly, on this Africa Month, we remember the fighters for the cause of Africa. We remember Jafta Masemola, the longest-serving prisoner on Robben Island, who taught us, his disciples, that we are not paper tigers, but real blood tigers. Chairperson, Honorable Kwankwa said I should publicly apologize for his absence. He had an emergency. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mare, Honorable Mare.
As chairperson, today I dedicate my speech to the honourable members of the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises. Members who were brave enough to stand up against corruption in state-owned enterprises and stood up to intimidation. They spent hours working through documents requested and questioned witnesses until late in the evening at Parliament's Public Enterprises Committee inquiry into Eskom. The governance of South Africa's power utility has been undermined and repurposed to materially benefit a political connected elite while compromising national and social development. The committee probed breaches of laws and regulations and exposed individuals' acts of corruption. Where these were clear, it will recommend prosecution and forward relevant details to the National Prosecution Authorities. The Department of Public Enterprises oversees 6 state-owned companies that play a pivotal role in providing services to all our people. These 6 companies are the key drivers of economic growth over the short and medium term. The DA, however, supports a partial privatization of some of these SOEs. The DA do support National Development Plan. The department must strengthen its oversight capacity and implement its new strategy to improve the performance of state-owned companies in order to sustainably enhance their contribution to the implementation of the NDP. The capital expenditure program in state-owned companies under the oversight of the department is an important policy instrument to accelerate economic growth. This has largely been driven by Eskom and Transnet. As far as the budget is concerned, the majority of the allocation is within compensation of employees. Spending on consultants sits at 11.5% of the budget over the medium term, and that is too much. The budget for legal services increased by 4.3% over the medium term and is acceptable to ensure compliance with the applicable legislation. Travel and substance increased by 45% from that 13.5 million in 2017-18 to 19.5 million over the medium term, and that is far too high. The Auditor General report on the annual performance plan of the Department of Public Enterprises for 2018-19 financial year stipulates in its findings that certain indicators are not well defined and certain targets not being specific and measurable. SOEs are experiencing governance and financial challenges that have affected their performance and weakened their governance structures. Chairperson, to highlight just a few: Eskom, corruption eroding needed cash and credibility of the institution and executive management in acting positions. Transnet, lack of action and consequences for widely reported allegations of corruption and poor consequence management and inability to close cases against corruption. South African Express, lack of credible leadership and poor performance, financial performance, and delays in the finalization of commercial agreements with SIA that continue to erode any revenue opportunity
Honourable
for the
Maree.
airline.
Point of order, Slalo.
Honourable Maree, let me just take this point of order.
Bengisabuza ukuthi engawuthatha nombuzo kumhlonishwa la ngaphambili.
Honourable Member, are you prepared to take a question from the Honourable Member?
Not today. Thank you very much. You can sit.
Not today. Continue, Honourable Maree.
On Safeco, instability of executive management level and line claims not solved. In Denel, allegations of corruptions against previous board and management and liquidity
Order,
challenges
honourable
in aging
members.
plant and equipment. Alex Score, operating cash balances is depleting without a stable source of income and delay in the implementation of the settlement agreement with the Richtersveld community. Voorsitter, daar's 'n uitdrukking in Afrikaans wat sê nuwe besems vir jou skoon. Ek moet minister Gordhan komplimenteer dat sy aanstelling hy al heelwat vermag het met nuwe aanstellings van raadslede wat 'n daadwerklike bydrae kon lewer en oor kennis beskik op die onderskeie rade. Strategiese poste op uitvoerende vlak by verskeie maatskappye is egter vakant. Die minister het 'n enorme taak op hande om dit so spoedig as moontlik met die mees bevoegde individue te vul. Baie dankie.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Ranto.
Honorable Chairperson, ministers, and everybody else that is inside the House. Let me also congratulate Minister Pravin Gordhan to be our minister. I just want to make few remarks or comments on what members have stated here. Honorable Dlamini, if you say you reject this budget and you are giving minister a lot of work to do, what must he use? Uyayibona asebenze ntoni ufuna makasebenze ntoni ukuze kulunge kwezi zinto afuna uzilungisa xa urejecta le budget. I just want also to say the issues of a minister being a sole shareholder, that the government it is in the government priorities. He is dealing, the government is dealing with it. There is a council that will be set up for state-owned companies. So, yonke lento ithethayo into esiyaziyo nento sizayenza kudala ikudala ikwimanifesto yethu sisebenzisa yona. Honorable Alberts, Eskom paid the loan within 30 days PIC. So it was right for the PIC to loan Eskom. Therefore, Eskom paid the loan back. Chairperson, we are celebrating this year lives of people well lived, and also we are celebrating a month popularly known as the month of mothers. I just want to say to South Africans, our loss of Mama Winnie Mandela and the loss of Zola Skweyiya was a gain in heaven. And also it was a gain to us as the African National Congress, because that means there are good things that are going to happen that are coming. Kuzawulunga. I want also to dedicate this speech of mine to Mama Sisulu, who would have been turned 100 years today. She dedicated her whole life to human rights, dignity, and freedom of our people. She was jailed and sent to solitary confinement several times just for fighting for human rights, which we are also fighting for now. If we are fighting unemployment, we are fighting poverty, we are fighting for human rights. Therefore, our SOEs that are meant to give jobs, to create jobs for our people, it is their right to create those jobs. It is your work that you must create those jobs for our people to have a better life going forward. We must also be able to liberate ourselves as South African psychologically, and our youth in particular must draw inspiration from the mothers of our struggle and believe that they are not destined to be domestic workers or to be gardeners. They must work hard and take advantage of opportunities made available by our ANC government to study and become pilots, engineers, and outstanding leaders in their field of endeavors. You know, for several days, I have been listening to opposition parties talking about ANC is always blaming apartheid, apartheid, apartheid. We understand why you don't want us to blame the apartheid, because you do not know the pain that we went through. Nani, nibancinci, you don't know i-apartheid ayisenza ntoni ebantwini, nifanele ukuresponda ngolu hlobo niresponda ngalo. The broad public sector has a huge role to play in changing the lives of poor communities. Transnet has led the way in changing the lives of students from poor backgrounds who have become engineers and technicians. I know of a young woman from Kukatyana who was at Transnet, who was working at the locomotives of Transnet. She is from the rural areas of
members.
Eastern Cape. I know her, I saw her. The company has trained 2,359 artisans who have qualified since 2014, 424 engineers, bursars graduated since 2014, and over the same period, 1,200 engineer technicians received experiential training at Transnet. This entity has set aside 7.7 billion for training over the MDS period. Mama Sisulu, Siyafuna sizimisele ukutshintsha ubomi babantu bethu kuba thina asizange silifumane ithuba lokuba masitshintshe ubomi mabutshintshe ubomi bethu. We are lagging behind as a nation in terms of research and development. Transnet is investing in this field because it sees this as the pinnacle in its drive towards becoming Africa's leading OEM, including, amongst others, what they are doing. It's a new diesel locomotive that they would want to construct going forward. Transnet managed to move loads on our roads of about 87.9 million tons from 2013 to 90.7 million tons in 2017, which is not enough, but they have their own target and they are going to reach their target. These achievements come despite the challenging operating environment and fluctuations of demand. Exporting of coal grew from 68.1 in 2014 to 77.0 in 2017-18. The ANC-led government will continue to support Transnet epoch-making investment drive, which injected an unprecedented 143 billion in South Africa's rail port, pipeline infrastructure and equipment. So it is not all doom as reflected outside. In its social investment, the Pelo Pepper Train Service continue their work in offering unique clinic on wheels, providing health care, especially to disadvantaged areas. Umsebenzi wokonga esawushiyelwa ngumama uSisulu usaqhubeka. Enkosi mama. We acknowledge the challenges we have in our SOCs, but we will make the new dawn a reality, and there is hope going forward. And the Tumamina program is being rolled out. Our people have welcomed the change in our government with open arms, and we will continue to move South Africa forward. Honorable Chairperson, Safcol is a company not well known in
Order,
South
honorable
Africa.
members.
It operates in Limpopo, Northern KZN, and Mpumalanga rural
Order,
areas.
honorable members.
It manages and controls state forests, and its mandate and scope of operation, their scope of operation is mainly rural. The ANC wants to see our communities' development and economic growth in our rural areas. Over the past 4 years, Safcol has invested 31.6 million in community projects, training and capacity building. Mama Sisulu did not fight for human rights and dignity for certain individuals, but it was for all of us. And it is regardless of color, creed, or background. Safcol managed to construct a number of timber structures in communities such as ECD centers where they operate. Mama Sisulu, we want to bring back the dignity of our people. Ayikho into ezakusoyista. Minister, you agreed to the Tumamina call, and we are here to work with you in cleaning and changing the image of the SOCs. You have already made changes and bring back the integrity of our state-owned companies by changing some of their board members. Amanye amakhalane ke asizowanceda azawuvela aziwele nje kuba ke ayazibona bakufuneka ewini. Siyabonga kubantu abasincedisayo ekulweni urhwaphilizo. Lo urhulumente we-African National Congress ayingorhulumente worhwaphilizo kwaye siza kululwa urhwaphilizo luphele nya ngentsebenziswane nangobambiswana. President, your call has been received by the whole country. We therefore dare not fail you as your
Order, honorable
organization.
members. Order.
South Africa is ours. We don't have any other place or anywhere else to go. And I wanna be there. I wanna be there when communities triumph over poverty and disease. I wanna lend my hand. Andifuna ukuma apha ndibe ndihawula abantu belindele i-service delivery pha ezantsi ezikwi-communities. Ndizawuma apha ndiye nento ebantwini. Ininzi into esiyenzileyo singulo rhulumente waseMzantsi Afrika futhi ngowutshintsha abaphathiswa side sifikelele ekubeni ba sifumane umphathiswa ochubekileyo, umphathiswa one-integrity ku-public enterprises. Siyavuya, sizawuqhuba siye phambili. Abantu abangavumiyo okokuba masisebenze, sizawusebenza nikhona,
Order, honorable members.
nifuna, ningafuni. Sizawusebenza thina kuba abantu bajonge thina ngo-2014 sinikwe imandate ngabantu siyi-African National Congress ezantsi besithi abantu hambani siyanithuma hambanotshintsha ubomi bethu singabantu balapha eMzantsi Afrika. Siyavuma ke chairperson namhlanje that sizaba notshintsho esilwenzayo ebantwini bethu siqhutywa yimvelaphi yethu kuba kaloku thina sinemvelaphi. Aba bantu abakhwaza apha nibamamele abanamvelaphi abazazi babazawuthini kunyaka ozwayo balwa u-2019 abangamaziyo okokuba u-2019 uphethe ntoni sithi
Honorable member, your time is expired.
abayaziyo okokuba u-2019 lo usiphethele ntoni ubaphethele ntoni abantu bethu. Siyavuma siyi-African National Congress kule budget enkosi.
Chairperson.
Order, honorable members. Order.
Chairperson.
Order, honorable members. Why are you rising, honorable member?
No, I want to notify the public that...
Honorable members.
Wait.
No. Honorable member, who is shouting like that? Who is shouting like that?
Yeah.
This is not a BOO. What is your point of order, honorable member?
No, Chairperson, I want to, because this is our chairperson on the inquiry. And today she was not the best, but it's not how she works. She's
What?
very strong.
Thank you, honorable
So I want
member.
the public to
Please
forgive
take
her
your seat
today.
now.
But
I
she's
now,
very strong.
I now call upon the honorable minister. Honorable Minister,
Chairperson, let
before you
me
continue,
firstly-
Honorable Minister, before you continue, honorable members, we are joined by guests from the public in the gallery here, and this is the conduct that you are displaying to them. Please, behave like honorable members. Behave like honorable members. Continue, Honorable Minister.
Chairperson, let me firstly start by joining the honorable members in complimenting the Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises. And in fact, also the evidence leader, Mr. Vanara, who notwithstanding many efforts to intimidate him and even bribe him, carried on very bravely with his task and gave us and it was truly a non-party political endeavor, and one which I think other parties and committees in Parliament need to replicate so that we can indeed hold public organs to account in a proper, knowledgeable way rather than just make political points. I want to also appreciate the fact that despite some of the differences we might have expressed today, we agree on a number of objectives. Firstly, we want to stop and end state capture. Secondly, we want to fight corruption wherever we find it and fight them on a non-political party basis, but indeed as South Africa as a whole. Thirdly, we want to improve governance in our institutions and increase accountability. Fourth, we want financial stability in these institutions, and we want to stop the reliance on the fiscus that is quite evident at this point in time. But ultimately, we want to change the business models, retain that which works, but also start developing new things which will enable SOCs to last another 50 or 40 years as they have already in their lifespan. Many members have actually called for consequences and consequence management, and we will start demonstrating that as a department and certainly as a government as well. And clearly, one of the things that we need to help many South Africans understand in the business sector and elsewhere and in the SOCs is distinguish between national interest and personal interest. The arthritis that ends up in the pocket is indeed the personal interest. The national interest to make these institutions work and work in the interest of everyone is obviously the key thing. But whilst we debate the current environment and morass we find ourselves in, it's equally important to cast our eyes 5 or 10 years ahead and ask where will these institutions be? What kind of service will they actually offer? What kind of public goods will they put to South Africans at that point in time? And how will they contribute to economic development in an inclusive way, in a job-creating way, and with a much more skilled workforce in South Africa than we currently have at this point in time? I can assure you that the President has a clear vision about, let's call it the government strategic management of SOCs, and he will announce some of his intentions in due course. So these isolated way in which we deal, in the siloed way in which we deal with SOCs, might soon be a thing of the past as well. I think equally important is what we notice when we interview some of the board members of the past, is their lack of knowledge of the business itself. Unless, even in Parliament, we begin to understand what does Transnet Rail do? What does an Eskom's power station look like? I didn't know. So with Mr. Mabuza and Mr. Hadebe and some officials, we actually visited one last week, and actually saw its operations, over 40-year-old one called Hendrina. It so happened that it also is supposed to be supplied with coal by the Optimum Tegeta mine. And the two conveyor belts that are supposed to bring coal from the mine, which Eskom gave a guarantee of 1.6 billion rands and offered prepayments for as the inquiry uncovered, those conveyor belts are standing still whilst coal is being exported opportunistically so that the business rescue practitioners and others can make some money, something that we've asked the board to start looking into. Because I think it's quite shameful. That, in effect, is a government mine, because that's a government-sponsored mine in terms of its history, and certainly with the kind of investment that Eskom made in it, it should get some returns in that particular regard as well. On the question of boards and selection of board members, you'll see an advert in tomorrow's newspapers asking anybody who's interested to offer their services, provided that they have skills, provided they have an ethical background, provided they can understand what conflict of interest is, and they're prepared to serve the nation and not themselves. They're welcome to apply so that they can be considered for future board positions. Now, on the question of South African Express, I've just received a very brief report, but the event that Honorable Luyenge talks about in relation to the flight from East London, that was not an issue of maintenance. It was a stress failure of a propeller. So it's an important part, but a part that actually failed us at the wrong possible time. But I can assure you that we'll get a more comprehensive report, and if there is any risk at all that these planes are not safe enough to fly, then we will have to take the necessary actions to ground them. And hopefully we wouldn't get to that point. On the McKinsey payback of R1 billion, the chair of Eskom, Mr. Mabuza, is currently looking into that matter. Eskom wants that R1 billion. It can do well with that money. He must come and show you the check sometime. But you don't operate with checks these days, so I'm not sure what you're going to do. On the question that several members raised about the Transnet pensioners, Transnet, it appears, is willing to settle, although the matter is sub judice at the moment, or let's put it this way, it's in the courts at the moment. But I think what's blocking the two sides from getting together is possibly an extravagant evaluation of what pensioners are entitled to, as opposed to what might really be the case. So I think if all of us can encourage a realistic amount, in this particular case, we're quite willing to bring the parties together and see how we can deal with this particular story. In relation to the Durban port that Honorable Singh raised, we'll look into the 1.8 billion rands and whether it was in fact value for money. Secondly, there was a slowdown in the container traffic, let's put it that way, and that led to Transnet reviewing the time frames that they originally actually indicated. And the current time frames is that work will now commence only in 2026. But that in the meantime, the land will be leased to an outfit called a Lanseria Airport Consortium until 2026. Honorable Kabashe, I think, makes some important points in relation to parliamentary oversight, and I hope that you move on to the next SOC, and so that the public can again see how executives and board members behave, their willingness to be transparent and accountable, and our right and your right as Parliament to actually hold them to account as well. And as we do that, I think that becomes an important cultural DNA that we begin to fit into Parliament's existence and work as well. One of the issues with capital projects in many instances is, let's call it understandable overreach in terms of scope and cost, and not understandable overscoping and cost requirements. So let's look at how much Medupi was supposed to cost, as much as it did cost, the pipeline, what it was supposed to cost and what it now costs, how much of it is as a result of unforeseen circumstances, and how much of it is in fact something that could have been avoided. I would agree with Honorable Marais that the new broom is going to try to sweep clean, but brooms have many strands, and all of you can have a choice of becoming a strand in a broom so that it is really sweeping clean. And either we want to be passive critics or we want to be active players who participate in the process of cleaning up. There's any number of examples we can all give. And that reinforces Honorable Mazzoni's point as well, that we need to stand together. We need to ensure that state capture doesn't actually take too long to eradicate. And of course, there's going to be resistance to any attempt to tackle corruption, as we can see in many different situations. And our job is to still serve the public well and ensure that the thieves and the corrupt people actually don't get away. The Honorable Dlamini makes that point, and we certainly share that objective with him. The locomotive tender has its first investigation already. The newspapers are beginning to also publish some of the facts in relation to that. But I can assure you that our intention is to get to the bottom of all of that and make sure that the true facts are known, and the sudden expansion of 30-odd billion rands to 50-odd billion rands has either a valid explanation or some orange uniforms need to be waiting for the people concerned. Honorable Singh, I've responded to your point about the Durban port. Honorable Kubisa, you said that there's some bad treatment at some of the ports. If there's any information that you have in this regard, please make it available so that we could ask the Transnet management and now the interim board to respond to that. I'm not going to be able to cover the rest of our colleagues because the 10 minutes are almost up, but let me thank you for your very constructive participation in the debate, and I hope that debate is not the only thing that we do about corruption and state capture. Let's also celebrate the good things that we have in our state-owned companies, the huge potential they have to serve our country, its economy, and its people well, and let's start building those strengths so that we can benefit from all of that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. That concludes the debate and the business of this mini plenary. The plenary will now rise.